Why did a ribbon matter so much to him? Why did one strip of dark red silk, stitched with numbers, freeze a seasoned officer where he stood? Major David Harrison had walked into the armory 100 times before. He thought he knew every shadow in that place, every smell of oil and metal, every face that came and went. But on that Tuesday morning, under the harsh fluorescent hum, something caught his eye that didn't belong. She was sitting in the farthest corner, hunched over a suppressor, hands moving with an elegance that didn't belong to a maintenance grunt. Her name was on her uniform, Specialist Felicity. Another soldier in pressed fatigues, bun pulled tight, expression unreadable. She'd been invisible for months, arriving before dawn, staying until after dark. She never raised her voice, never drew attention, just another body among thousands at fort. But Harrison saw it. Not the suppressor in her hands, not the careful line of tools laid out with surgeon's order. He saw the ribbon tied around her wrist. Dark red, black thread, numbers, 298 confirmed. And in that moment the clipboard nearly slipped from his grip. His blood went cold, because he knew exactly what it meant. Only they wore those ribbons, only the ghost widows. Snipers who never officially existed. Shadows who bled across deserts and mountains, leaving nothing but silence behind. Soldiers who didn't miss and didn't return unless the mission was complete. And according to every file, every record Harrison had ever seen, every ghost widow was dead. Yet here she was, quiet, breathing, cleaning a suppressor like the world hadn't just shifted around her. She noticed his stare. Slowly, without flinching, she tugged her sleeve down and hid the ribbon. No words, no acknowledgement, just silence. And in that silence, Harrison realized something unsettling. He might be looking at a ghost who was never supposed to be alive. He cleared his throat. His voice sounded small in the cavernous armory. "That's impressive work you're doing, Specialist." Her eyes lifted to his, steady, professional, but deeper than they should been. "Thank you, sir. I take pride in my work." Nothing remarkable, nothing anyone else would notice, but Harrison couldn't stop watching the way her hands moved. No hesitation, no wasted motion, as if she'd assembled these parts in pitch black under fire when silence meant survival. He forced himself to move on, clipboard scratching over checklists that suddenly didn't matter, but his eyes kept drifting back. She didn't seem bothered, didn't flinch, but he knew she was aware, hyper-aware every second. And behind that calm there was something else, something she hadn't told anyone. Not yet. Felicity, or Sarah, though she hadn't spoken that name in years, had perfected invisibility. The army wanted soldiers who stood out, leaders, sharpshooters, specialists. She learned the opposite. The less they remembered her, the safer she stayed. 8 months she'd been here, 8 months of anonymity, suppressor grease under her nails, maintenance logs filled with neat handwriting. To everyone else she was the quiet one, the workhorse, the soldier who disappeared in a crowd of two. But she carried something they could never see. Every morning before her uniform jacket went on, she saw the ribbon. She tied it tight, like a shackle she chose to wear. 298 confirmed. It wasn't pride, it wasn't even shame. It was weight. Each stitch a life ended in silence. Each number a breath stolen through the crosshairs. And she carried it alone. Because no one here could know what that meant. They thought she was logistics, supply chain, a marksmanship score above average maybe, but nothing remarkable, nothing that hinted at who she had been. The girl from Montana who had enlisted at 19 was gone. She'd been reborn in the program that didn't exist. Ghost Widow 7. Harrison finished his inspection with shaky focus. Rifles in perfect racks, pistols gleaming in felt cases, order everywhere. But his thoughts tangled around the woman in the corner. That ribbon. He knew what it meant. He'd seen it once before in a classified briefing that had chilled the room. Red silk, black numerals, a kill count worn like a badge or a curse. Ghost widows weren't just snipers. They were weapons, dropped into territories that didn't exist on maps, told to erase names the world never knew. They didn't leave footprints, didn't leave echoes, just numbers. And now one was here, hidden as a specialist cleaning suppressors. Why? He wrote notes that had nothing to do with serial numbers. His hand trembled. His eyes betrayed him every few minutes, drifting back to her. She never looked up, but she knew. She always knew. He saw it in the way her shoulders moved, relaxed yet alert, in the way her breathing never faltered. She had assessed him the moment he stepped close, calculated exits, measured threat, filed him under complication. Not enemy, not yet. When her shift ended, she walked out into the dusk with the same calm stride as always. But inside, something had shifted. He had seen the ribbon. That couldn't be undone. She returned to quarters stripped of personality. No photos, no souvenirs, nothing that whispered her past, just a bed, a desk, a locked case. From the case she drew the secure comm device. Small, anonymous, hidden from curious eyes. Her message was short. Inspection today, possible compromise. Officer showed interest beyond normal parameters. Request guidance. She sent it, then sat in the silence that followed. Waiting was always hardest. Even here, the silence filled with ghosts. She thought of her last mission, Syria, a clean kill, extraction flawless. And yet afterward they had ended the program. She'd been erased. Ghost Widow 7 declared dead. Sarah buried in paper. Now only Felicity existed. Until Harrison saw what he wasn't supposed to. The comm device chimed. Colonel Wells's voice appeared in text. Understand. Maintain protocols. Do not escalate unless directly threatened. Will investigate officer background. Cold, practical words. The kind of reassurance only bureaucrats could offer. Felicity, Sarah set the device aside. She leaned back on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. She knew better. No cover lasted forever. She dreamed of rifles, of scopes catching breath in the cold, of faces through crosshairs, the weight of her trigger finger, the silence afterward. She woke before the alarm, as always. Another day to pretend, another day to be invisible. She dressed, ribbon hidden beneath her sleeve. And as she crossed the base toward the armory, she carried the same question she had carried for years. How long could she outrun her own shadow? Why was he back so soon? Why couldn't he just let the inspection be what it was, routine, forgettable? Felicity noticed the change the moment Major Harrison walked into the armory again. No clipboard this time. No casual rhythm of serial numbers and checklists. He went straight to her, his expression steady, professional but heavier. Specialist, he said quietly, standing by her workstation. I'd like to speak with you, privately. The wrench in her hand paused mid-turn, just for a second, barely noticeable, but in her head alarms rang. A request like that wasn't optional. Officers didn't suggest. They ordered. She set the suppressor down, arranging her tools with calm precision, buying time. Of course, sir. Where would you prefer? My office, Building C, room 207. She gave the faintest nod. 15 minutes. I need to secure this equipment. He accepted, turning without another word. The moment he left, she exhaled through her nose, slow, controlled. Her mind racing, though her hands never faltered as she stowed the tools. She had trained for this. Years of learning to keep her pulse steady while bullets cracked past her skull. This was just another battlefield, different terrain, same rules. Never let them see you panic. The walk to Building C felt longer than it should have, each step measured, each corner scanned. She reminded herself he wasn't an enemy, not yet, but curiosity was its own kind of threat. She knocked once, entered on his word. Harrison's office was neat, predictable, commendations on the wall, regulations framed, a desk that spoke of someone who cared about order. Please sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She did, posture perfect, neutral expression, every inch the obedient specialist. He opened a folder, not the standard personnel summary she knew supervisors carried. This one was thicker, too thick. "Your maintenance work is exceptional," he began, almost kindly, "beyond what I'd expect from your background." She gave the rehearsed answer. "I've been fortunate to learn from experienced people. You pick things up." He nodded, but his eyes lingered. "Your record shows Iraq, Afghanistan, but vague details, forward positions, units left unnamed. Can you elaborate?" Her jaw relaxed deliberately, feigning thought. "Mostly logistics, sir. Supply convoys, weapons upkeep for smaller outposts, nothing remarkable." But his hand reached into the drawer, producing a photograph. Soldiers in desert gear, special operations by their equipment, their faces blurred by dust and distance, but she knew them. He slid it across the desk. "Recognize anyone?" She studied it evenly. "I'm not sure, sir. When and where was this?" He didn't answer. He retrieved the photo, sliding it back into the drawer. His next words were colder. "Specialist, I saw the ribbon." Her throat tightened, but she forced her eyes not to flinch. "I know what it means," he continued, "and I know only certain programs outside the record, used them." Silence stretched. Her heartbeat thudded once, twice. "Sir," she said carefully, "I think there may be some confusion. I don't have any unauthorized insignia." But his stare didn't waver. "Red silk, black numerals, 298 confirmed, I'm not mistaken." Her chest filled with slow air, her training keeping her calm. He knew too much, more than he should. Then he leaned back and his tone changed. Less accusation, more certainty. "I have clearance, higher than you might think. If you're connected to certain programs, I need to know." Her eyes narrowed slightly. That was a claim she couldn't take at face value. Clearances meant nothing unless proven. "Sir," she said softly, "if you do have that clearance, then you already know I can't discuss classified assignments without verification." It was a gamble, a measured disclosure, acknowledging without confirming. For a long moment he studied her. Then he reached into the drawer once more and placed a folder on the desk. Thick, official, classified markings stamped across the cover. And her real name in black letters. Sarah, Ghost Widow 7. Her fingers twitched. The name felt foreign and familiar all at once. "Ms. Harrison said evenly, I think we can set aside the cover for this conversation." She stared at the folder. Months of lies, routines, daily invisibility, torn open by a man with a key. Her voice came quieter now, lower, edged with something she hadn't used in months. "Then I'll need to verify your clearances." He picked up the phone, dialing codes she recognized, exchanging sequences only those with legitimate access could speak. She listened, measured, and when he hung up, the silence between them was different. She was exposed, but not hunted, not yet. Her mind reeled as he spoke, describing the real reason he had dug deeper. Fort was hosting a joint exercise, special operations across branches. They needed technical advisors who understood more than manuals. They needed someone like her. "You could help," he said, leaning forward. "Weapons support, precision tuning, guidance that only comes from experience." It wasn't accusation, it was opportunity. And yet it felt like a trap. Her voice was steady, though her stomach clenched. "Sir, my assignment was designed for low visibility, transition. I'm not sure participation aligns with those objectives." He nodded, calm. "Understandable, but this isn't exposure to the public. You work with cleared personnel, people who know what cover means, what security means." She hesitated, her hands clasped together in her lap, knuckles pale. He was offering a door, one she had shut long ago. "What's the duration?" she asked finally. "Several weeks, multiple phases, starting with equipment prep, ending with live fire evaluations. You wouldn't be in the field, not in the way you once were, but your expertise could change outcomes and save lives. Her chest rose slowly, her eyes shifting to the folder still on the desk, her past staring back at her. Ghost Widow 7. That night she sat alone in her quarters, secure comm device in hand. Opportunity presented, risk of exposure high, request guidance. The reply came faster than she expected. Colonel Wells again, opportunity acceptable risk, recommend acceptance, briefing to follow. Felicity Sarah closed her eyes. The colonel's words confirmed what she feared. This wasn't just training. There was more beneath the surface. There always was. Her hands trembled as she tied the ribbon around her wrist, then covered it with her sleeve. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was punishment. The past she had buried had clawed its way back. And tomorrow she would step into it again. Sleep came fractured, memories crept through the cracks, wind over desert sand, a scope crosshair finding its place, a voice in her ear, her spotter calm as always. Steady, Sarah, just breathe. She woke before dawn, chest heavy, hand pressed against her wrist where the ribbon lay hidden. The girl from Montana was gone. The armory specialist was a mask. And Ghost Widow 7 was stirring again. How long had it been since she'd heard his voice, since she trusted another heartbeat beside her own? The answer came when she scanned the roster Major Harrison had slid across the desk during her security briefing. Her eyes traced names, credentials, unit affiliations, and then she froze. Her spotter, her anchor, reported killed in Syria, the same operation that had supposedly buried her. Her throat went dry. She leaned back in the chair, forcing herself to read the rest, but the letters blurred. All she could see was face, etched in memory, steadying her when her hands wanted to tremble. The one person who had been more than a voice in the comms. Now alive, and about to walk into the same training exercise. She closed the folder with careful precision. Her pulse was louder than the hum of the fluorescent light above. "Problem?" Harrison asked. Her lips parted, then closed again. "No, sir, just unexpected." He studied her but didn't press. That night she sat at her desk in the barren quarters, light from the single lamp throwing shadows across the walls. The comm device waited, dark screen like an unblinking eye. She could message Wells again. Ask about. Ask why she hadn't been told. But she knew the answer. Need to know. Always need to know. She ran a thumb over the ribbon on her wrist. 298. Had counted everyone with her. Every confirmed. Every silence after the trigger. If anyone knew what those numbers meant, it was him. Her breath caught. What would he say when he saw her? Would he call her Sarah? Would he blame her for believing he'd died? Or would he simply nod like he always had when words weren't necessary? She set the device aside, untouched. Some answers weren't meant to come through encrypted messages. They came face to face. The assembly ground was already alive when she arrived early the next morning. Trucks, crates, weapons racks, soldiers moving with the restless energy of something bigger than routine drills. She kept to the perimeter, her eyes scanning like they always had, entry points, blind spots, faces. Most were strangers, but a few bore the unmistakable weight of men and women who had walked the same shadows she had. And then she saw him. Step down from a command vehicle, movement slower than she remembered but unmistakable. His frame solid, his eyes sharper than the years suggested. Her chest tightened. For a second the years peeled back and she was prone in the dirt, his voice steady in her earpiece. 2 clicks left, wind shifting. "You've got it. Steady, Sarah." He turned, their eyes locked across the distance. Time fractured. Recognition. His nod was almost imperceptible, but it was there. She didn't move, didn't smile, didn't break cover. Because the briefing horn sounded, and both of them turned back to their roles. The first phase of the exercise was controlled, equipment familiarization, testing stations, calibration. She was assigned to precision rifles, the kind of work she could do blindfolded. Snipers cycled through, some fresh-faced, others weathered. They handled weapons with skill, but their eyes betrayed something, gaps in knowledge, gaps she recognized. She adjusted scopes, corrected grips, explained ballistics most manuals never touched. She spoke sparingly, voice level precise. Every instruction measured. And as the day stretched on, she felt something she hadn't expected. Purpose. For months she'd been cleaning suppressors, maintaining the. But here, teaching techniques honed in silence and blood, she felt her hands alive again. These soldiers weren't ghost widows, but maybe they could carry pieces of what the program had taught her without the weight of the ribbon. By late afternoon she was drained. Sweat at her collar, fingers smudged with carbon. She stored the rifles, logged her adjustments, and finally allowed herself to breathe. That's when the shadow fell across her workstation. She didn't look up right away. She knew who it was. "Still organizing tools like you're about to be inspected," said softly. Her head lifted. His eyes hadn't changed. Older, yes, tired but steady. "You're alive," she whispered before she could stop herself. "So are you." They walked together at dusk, away from the noise of the training ground, silence stretching between them. "I thought you were gone," she said at last. "I was supposed to be," he replied. "Paperwork said KIA, clean way to shut doors." "Same for me." He glanced at her sleeve, at the faint bulge where the ribbon hid. His jaw tightened. "Still wearing it." She looked away. "I tried to leave it behind." "And failed." "It's not something you leave." They stopped at the edge of the fence line, where the last light of day painted long shadows. Crossed his arms. "Why did you come back? You could stayed buried." Her laugh was dry. "Choice wasn't mine. Major found the ribbon." "Of course he did," exhaled. "Always someone digging where they shouldn't." She tilted her head, studying him. "Why are you here? Why sign up for this?" His eyes darkened. "Because they're still sending kids into fights they're not ready for, and someone has to teach them the truth. Manuals won't save them." She felt the truth in his words. It was the same reason she hadn't walked away after the first day. The same reason her pulse quickened when a sniper hit a shot he didn't think possible after her guidance. They weren't here for glory. They were here to pass something on. But under that conviction lay the darker truth. Every lesson was written in lives they had already taken. That night, lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling again, the ribbon tight against her wrist. She thought of his eyes when he saw it. Not judgment, not approval, just understanding. Maybe that was what unsettled her most. The ribbon hadn't been just hers to carry. It had been theirs. Every number stitched into the silk was a shot they had calculated together, a silence they had both endured. And now, years later, it was still between them. Her breath trembled as she closed her eyes. The ghosts didn't fade. They never would. But maybe they could teach the living to carry their rifles differently. The next morning began with live-fire drills. Rows of targets set against the horizon, wind kicking across the field. Snipers prone, scopes glinting. She moved among them, correcting stances, checking optics, murmuring adjustments. Her voice steady, calm, even when one soldier's round landed feet wide. "Breathe with it," she said softly, crouching beside him. "Don't fight the wind, marry it." He tried again. The round found center. His breath caught, disbelief flooding his face. Her hand touched his shoulder once. Firm. "Good, remember that." For a moment she saw herself years ago, young, uncertain, and someone's voice guiding her through the crosshairs. She swallowed hard, stepped back. From the edge of the field, watched. He didn't interfere, didn't need to. Their eyes met across the distance, and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, memory, and the weight of knowing what it cost to teach others to hit the impossible. When dusk fell again, she sat on her bunk with the comm device in hand. She typed the message, then paused. Progress steady, risks higher than anticipated, alive. Her finger hovered over send. Then she erased it. Because some truths weren't meant for handlers. Some belonged only to the ghosts who carried them. Why did the silence feel heavier than gunfire? Why was it that in a room full of soldiers, she could hear only the ghosts of her past? The third day of the exercise had barely begun, but Felicity felt the weight pressing against her chest. She had walked onto the range before dawn, ribbon tied, sleeve pulled down, hair tight against her head. She blended like always, just another specialist, just another soldier working support. But she was. The rifles lined on the tables weren't tools today. They were mirrors. Every scope she adjusted reflected her own face back at her. Every round chambered echoed with shots she'd taken long ago in places that didn't exist on maps. And the soldiers looking to her for guidance, too young, too eager, their eyes bright with ambition but untested by the silence that followed a kill. They didn't know what they were asking for, what they were learning. And she wasn't sure she wanted to give it to them. Major Harrison stood at the perimeter, clipboard forgotten in his hand. He wasn't watching the drills as much as he was watching her. She felt it like heat at her back. He had seen through the torn open her cover, and now he was calculating. He wasn't malicious, at least not yet, but his curiosity was a scalpel, cutting too close to nerves she thought long dead. He wanted to understand who she was, why she was here. But what would he do if he understood too much? The first shots cracked across the range. Students missed, corrected, missed again. She moved among them with patience, her words precise. Don't chase the target, anticipate it. Win's your partner, not your enemy. Every trigger pull writes something you can't erase. One soldier, a boy barely 20, asked without thinking, "Ma'am, how many have you?" Her glare cut him off before he finished. He swallowed, looked away, and fired again. She didn't answer, she couldn't. But behind her, his voice carried low, steady, as if to remind them both. Enough to know the cost. Her chest tightened. She turned, eyes locking with his. He hadn't spoken to her since the night before, but that sentence carried more weight than a full confession. The young sniper looked between them, uncertain. Then he focused back on his scope. Felicity exhaled, slow, the ghost stayed. At midday, Harrison approached, finally closing the distance he'd been watching across. "You're good with them," he said simply, nodding toward the shooters. "It's what I do," she replied, not looking at him. "Correction, it's what you used to do, now you're doing it again. Why?" Her hands froze briefly on the adjustment knob of a scope. She didn't answer right away. The question wasn't fair. Not here, not now. "Because someone has to," she said finally, her tone flat. He studied her profile. "You don't sound convinced." Her jaw flexed. She turned, eyes meeting his, voice low. "I don't get to be convinced. I get to be necessary." For a moment he said nothing. Then quietly, "That ribbon isn't just numbers, is it?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him to back off, to leave the ghosts buried. Instead she turned away. "It's history, sir, nothing more." But they both knew that was a lie. When the sun dipped low, the exercise shifted. Targets were no longer static silhouettes. They became moving forms obscured by brush, half hidden in shadow. Stress drills, simulations of chaos. Soldiers struggled, missed more than they hit. Some cursed, others clenched their teeth in frustration. Felicity's instincts stirred. Her blood thrummed in her veins. She wanted to drop prone, scope to eye, fingers steady on the trigger. She wanted to show them how silence could slice through distance. But she held back, hands folded behind her back, face unreadable. Then stepped forward, rifle in hand. He slid prone with a fluidity that time hadn't stolen. Scope up. 1 breath, 2, 3 shots. 3 hits, center. The field went quiet, soldiers stared. Stood, dust clinging to his elbows. His eyes found hers across the range. "Your turn," he said. Her heart jolted. She hadn't touched a rifle in months, not since the ribbon became a secret she hid instead of something she carried openly. She shook her head slightly. "Not my place." But Harrison's voice carried across the field, calm, authoritative. "Specialist, show them." The word wasn't a suggestion. Her hands trembled once before she suppressed it. She stepped forward, picked up the rifle had left. The weight settled into her palms like an old friend. Heavy, familiar, terrifying. She slid prone, scope pressed against her eye, breath slowed. The world narrowed. Targets blurred and sharpened, wind whispering across the field. Her finger rested on the trigger. "You don't have to." "You do." The shot cracked, target dropped. Another. 5 rounds, 5 hits. Silence. She lowered the rifle, her hand steady now, though her chest was a storm. The soldiers watched her, awe etched into their faces. But she didn't feel proud, she felt hollow. His voice broke the quiet. "Ghost widow doesn't miss." Harrison's eyes widened slightly at the phrase. The soldiers exchanged confused glances. She stood brushing dirt from her sleeve, her voice steady though her throat burned. Class dismissed. That night she couldn't sleep. The ribbon dug into her skin, as if punishing her for breaking the illusion of anonymity. She sat at the desk, head in her hands, trying not to let the images come back. But they always did. Every shot carried a face. Every number was a ghost. The knock on her door startled her. "Who is it?" she asked sharply. "It's me," his voice. She hesitated, then unlocked the door. He stepped inside, closing it quietly behind him. "You shouldn't have done that today," she said, words sharper than intended. "Neither should you," he countered, "but you did." She looked away. "I didn't want them to see me, not like that." "They needed to." Her voice cracked. "And what did they see? A soldier, or a killer who can't put the rifle down?" He stepped closer, his presence steady, grounding. "They saw someone who survived what they're walking into. They saw truth." Her breath shook. "Truth doesn't keep you warm at night." "No," he said quietly, "but it keeps them alive." For a moment the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was shared. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe I was wrong to come back." Shook his head. "You didn't come back, you were pulled back. The only question now is, what are you going to do with it?" She didn't answer, she couldn't. Because she didn't know. The next morning, Harrison summoned her to his office again. He gestured for her to sit, his expression unreadable. "You understand what happened yesterday can't be undone," he said calmly. She kept her eyes steady. "I didn't intend." "You showed them what precision looks like," he interrupted. "They'll remember that long after the exercise ends, and maybe some of them will walk away alive because of it." Her jaw clenched. "Or maybe they'll chase numbers they shouldn't." Harrison leaned forward, eyes piercing. "Which do you think weighs more heavily on your conscience, showing them what's possible or letting them fail without knowing?" Her chest rose and fell once sharply. He waited. Finally her voice came soft, bitter, almost a whisper. "I don't get to have a conscience, not anymore." The silence that followed was heavier than any gunfire. How much of herself could she keep buried before the cracks showed? How many days of silence before the ghosts demanded a voice? The exercise shifted into its next phase, night operations. Darkness was the great equalizer. It stripped bravado from the young and left only instinct. And instinct was where truth lived. Felicity stood at the edge of the range as soldiers fumbled with NVGs, adjusting straps, whispering nervous jokes. Their green-tinted world was shaky, uncertain. She knew the terrain differently. Every shadow was a lesson, every rustle in the brush a test. Moved through the ranks, calm and deliberate, correcting grips, offering steady reassurance. He still carried himself like her spotter, eyes scanning not just the targets but the shooters themselves, gauging breath, fear, resolve. Harrison observed from the perimeter again, clipboard forgotten, his focus fixed on her. She could feel it even in the dark. He wasn't watching the exercise. He was watching the war inside her. The first drills began. Pop-up targets flashed for mere seconds, distances shifting without warning. The soldiers missed more than they hit, curses sharp in the night air. She moved among them, voice low but firm. Trust the scope, don't rush. Anticipate the pattern, not the flash. One soldier, trembling with frustration, snapped, "Easy for you to say." She crouched beside him, her tone calm. "I've missed too. Everyone does, but panic will always miss. Breathe slow, control the chaos." He tried again, hit. Relief broke across his face. Her chest tightened. She had said almost the same words years ago, whispered into her comms as steadied her in the field. The past wasn't fatting. It was bleeding into the present. Halfway through the drill, Harrison stepped closer, his voice low at her shoulder. "They trust you," he murmured. She kept her eyes on the soldiers. "Trust is dangerous." "Not always," he countered. "Sometimes it saves lives." Her jaw clenched, "or costs them." He didn't push further, but his silence was louder than argument. When the drill ended, approached, he gestured toward the quiet stretch beyond the range. "Walk with me." She hesitated, then followed. They stopped near a tree line, the night humming with crickets and distant engines. "You handled them well," said. She shook her head. "I'm not supposed to be here. I was meant to vanish, to be forgotten. But every time I open my mouth, I'm dragging it back." "Dragging what back?" "The widow," she said bitterly. "The numbers, the silence that followed every shot. It doesn't stay buried, it wants out." He studied her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "You think teaching them brings it back. I think it keeps it from owning you." Her laugh was sharp, humorless. "You really believe that?" "I have to," he said softly. "Otherwise the ghosts win." She looked away, her throat tightening. "They already did." Later that night, she sat on her bunk, staring at the ribbon on her wrist. She untied it slowly, letting the silk drape across her palm. Every stitch burned. She thought of the boy who had snapped at her earlier, his frustration boiling until she calmed him. Would he end up like her, measuring his worth by numbers stitched into cloth? Her stomach churned. She wanted to cut the ribbon to shreds, to throw it away, but her fingers tightened, clutching it like a lifeline. Because without it, who was she? The knock came again, not this time Harrison. She opened the door reluctantly. He didn't ask to come in. He simply handed her a sealed envelope. "Tomorrow," he said, "you'll want to be prepared." Then he walked away. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, orders. Not for training, not for simulation. Deployment. A real mission. Her breath caught. They were sending them out. And she was going with them. The briefing the next morning was clinical, detached. A simulated insurgent cell had been detected in a nearby training corridor. The exercise would end with a live infiltration, hostile role players, and unknown variables. The kind of chaos where lessons turned into instinct or casualties. But Felicity knew better. This wasn't just a drill. Too many details were redacted. Too many role players weren't marked as blanks. His eyes found hers during the briefing. He knew it too. Afterward, Harrison pulled her aside. "This is bigger than the others. That's why you're here." Her voice was cold. "I thought I was here to teach." "You are, but sometimes the lesson can't be learned in a classroom." Her fists clenched at her sides. "You're throwing them into fire they're not ready for." His eyes hardened. "Then make them ready." The night of the mission came fast. The unit loaded gear, nerves sharp in the air. She checked rifles, suppressors, optics, hands steady even as her chest tightened. Moved beside her, his presence grounding. "We'll keep them alive," he murmured. She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure she believed it. They moved out under a moonless sky, boots crunching over gravel, silence broken only by comm's clicks and shallow breaths. Felicity walked rear security, scanning shadows, instincts alive again. Every branch, every flicker of movement, every shift of the wind, it all came back, as natural as breathing. She hated how alive she felt. The first shots weren't blanks. Cracks split the night, sharper, louder, unmistakable. Soldiers dove for cover, panic flaring. "Contact front," someone shouted. Felicity dropped prone, rifle up, scope cutting through the dark. Figures moved in the brush, too precise, too disciplined. Not role players, not an exercise. Real. Her breath slowed, crosshair aligned. One shot, silence. Her stomach clenched, but there was no time. Another target moved. Another silence followed. The young soldiers scrambled, firing wild, their training fraying in the chaos. His voice cut through comm, steady, commanding. "Control your fire, breathe, find your lanes." Felicity's voice joined his, sharper, colder. "Watch your left flank, adjust elevation, focus." And they listened. The chaos bent toward control, not perfect but enough. The fight stretched long, minutes that felt like hours, until finally silence fell over the field. Bodies in the brush, smoke in the air, hearts hammering. Not an exercise, not anymore. When they regrouped, faces pale, eyes wide, Harrison's jaw was tight. He gave no explanation, no acknowledgement, just orders to return. But the soldiers looked at Felicity differently now. Not with awe, with something deeper, fear, respect, confusion. They had seen her shoot, seen her kill. She wanted to disappear into the dirt, to untie the ribbon and leave it there, but she couldn't. Because for the first time, they had survived because of her. And that was a weight heavier than any ribbon. That night she sat alone, trembling. The ribbon dug into her wrist as if mocking her. 298 wasn't true anymore. It was higher now. She buried her face in her hands. For the first time since Syria, she let herself cry. Not because of the kills, but because she realized something terrifying. She wasn't just a ghost. She was still alive. And being alive meant she could still be used. Why didn't anyone say the word? Why didn't anyone admit out loud that last night hadn't been an exercise at all? Morning came harsh and unforgiving. The unit assembled in the mess hall, trays clattering, voices hushed. No one laughed. No one bragged. The air was heavy with the silence of people who had seen something they weren't ready for. Felicity sat at the edge of the room, untouched food cooling on her tray. Her eyes drifted across the young soldiers. Their hands shook as they ate. Their eyes darted at shadows that weren't there. She recognized it all. The first kill. The first real fight. The first time you realized the line between exercise and survival had been a lie. She wanted to stand and tell them the truth. That what they felt wasn't weakness, it was proof they were human. But the words stayed locked in her chest, because truth here wasn't her right to give. Entered, carrying his tray with quiet steadiness. He slid into the seat across from her. His voice was low, meant for her ears only. "They think it was a test," he said. Her jaw tightened. It was. "I know that, you know that, but Harrison hasn't corrected them." Her fingers curled into fists on the table. "He used them, used us." Studied her, his eyes calm but searching. "The question is why?" Later that day, Harrison called a closed briefing. Just senior staff and her. She sat stiffly at the table as he laid down the after-action reports. His voice was clinical. Numbers, coordinates, casualty ratios. No mention of what it meant for the rookies to fire their first real shots in the dark. When the discussion ended, the room emptied, leaving only Harrison and Felicity. She broke the silence first. Her voice was sharp, cold. That wasn't training. Who were they? Harrison's eyes stayed level. Insurgents, a cell operating closer than command anticipated. Her throat burned. And you didn't warn them, you didn't warn us. They needed to face it, Harrison said, his tone clipped. Controlled chaos teaches faster than any lecture. His voice rumbled low. Controlled, that was almost a massacre. They survived, Harrison shot back, because of you too. Felicity stood, palms flat on the table. Her voice shook with restrained fury. You gambled their lives on a lesson. Harrison leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. And they're still alive to learn the next one. That's more than I can say for a lot of units I've seen. The room was heavy with silence. Finally, she straightened, her face a mask. If you ever use me like that again, Major, you'll regret it. Her words weren't a threat, they were a promise. That night she couldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, the shots replayed. The green haze of NVGs, the silhouettes falling in silence. The rookie's eyes afterward, wide, broken, changed. She sat on her bunk, ribbon clutched in her hand, twisting it tight until the silk dug into her palm. 298 was gone now. 299, 300, she had stopped counting. But the ribbon hadn't. It was lying to her now, mocking her. Her breath caught. She wanted to rip it apart, but she tied it back around her wrist instead. Because without it she was no one. Found her the next morning in the armory, cleaning rifles like she had on the very first day. Her movements were sharp, mechanical. You're spiraling, he said quietly. Her laugh was bitter. I've been spiraling for years. You're just here to see it now. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Sarah, you're not just a ribbon, you're not just numbers, you're still here. That has to mean something. Her hands froze on the bolt assembly. Slowly she looked up. Her eyes were glassy, but her voice was steel. It means they're not done with me. That's all it ever means. Shook his head. You can choose what it means. Her lips trembled, but no words came. She turned back to the rifle, shutting him out. By evening, Harrison summoned her again. She entered his office with guarded steps, her expression flat. He gestured to the chair. Sit. She stayed standing. His sigh was heavy. You don't trust me, I get that. Her voice was cold. Trust isn't something you gamble away, Major. He leaned back, studying her. You think I wanted last night to go the way it did? I didn't, but command doesn't give me luxuries. They give me orders, and I use the assets I have. Her stomach twisted. Assets. Yes, he said firmly. Assets, and you're one of them. Her chest burned with fury. She stepped closer, eyes narrowed. I'm not your weapon, not anymore. He held her gaze. Then stop acting like one. Walk away. Refuse. See how long they let you keep your cover. See how long they let you keep breathing. Her breath hitched. He wasn't threatening her. He was telling her the truth. And it terrified her more than any battlefield. That night, she wrote a message to Colonel Wells. Mission compromised. Exposure increased. Harrison leveraging cover against compliance. Request extraction. She hovered over send. Then deleted it. Because she already knew the response. Maintain position. Mission priority outweighs discomfort. She dropped the device onto the desk, head in her hands. Discomfort. That was the word they'd use. Not ghosts. Not lives. Not the way her heart cracked every time a young soldier looked at her like she was invincible. Discomfort. The next drill came at dawn. Urban combat. Close quarters. No distance to hide behind scopes. Felicity moved through the mock buildings with the soldiers, correcting, adjusting, guiding. But every corner, every shadow clawed at her nerves. Memories bled into the present. Breaching in Aleppo. Clearing compounds in Helmand. The smell of dust and blood, the weight of knowing one wrong step ended more than your life. It ended the mission, the team, the silence you fought to keep. Her hand brushed her wrist through the sleeve, the ribbon tight. She whispered under her breath, unheard. Stay with me, just stay. A door slammed open ahead. One soldier froze, too slow. Felicity lunged, dragging him back as a paint round splattered where his chest had been. He looked at her wide-eyed, breath ragged. She snapped sharper than she meant to. "Move or you die. There's no in-between." He nodded, trembling, and pushed forward again. When the drill ended, the soldiers looked at her differently once more. Not awe, not fear, something else. Dependence. And it scared her more than any firefight. That night found her sitting on the steps outside the barracks, staring at the dark horizon. "You saved him today," he said quietly. She didn't look up, or taught him he can't move without me. He sat beside her, silent, stretching before he spoke again. "What scares you more, losing them or them needing you?" Her breath caught, her throat ached. "Both," she whispered. Why hadn't they told her the truth from the start? Why did it always take blood, silence, and ghosts before anyone admitted what was really happening? The orders came down on a Thursday afternoon. The soldiers gathered in the briefing room, sweat still drying from their latest drills. Harrison stood at the front, voice crisp, posture sharp. "Another exercise," he said. "High-value capture, mock insurgent leader, compound scenario, you'll breach clear extract, standard playbook." The soldiers nodded, some nervous, others eager. But Felicity felt the lie the second it left his mouth. Her eyes cut too. He caught her look, his jaw tightening. He knew too. She waited until the briefing ended, the room emptying in a shuffle of boots. Then she stepped forward, voice low, hard. "That's not a drill, is it?" Harrison's expression didn't shift. "It's training." "Don't play word games with me, Major. Who's in that compound?" Silence stretched. Finally, he exhaled. "Intel suggests an arms broker, mid-tier, nothing spectacular but dangerous enough to warrant intervention. Command wants deniability. So officially, training." Her stomach twisted. "And you're throwing them in." "They need the experience," he said. "You and we'll keep them alive." Her chest burned. "We're not their shields." His voice sharpened. "You are whatever I need you to be." She stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "I'm not your ghost widow anymore." For the first time his mask cracked. His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "You're not mine, you're theirs, and they will never let you go." The words hit harder than a rifle butt, because she knew he was right. That night she sat on her bunk with the ribbon clenched in her fist. Every fiber of her wanted to walk away, to untie it, leave it on the desk, vanish into civilian anonymity. But then she saw their faces, the rookies, the way they looked at her after every drill, dependent, afraid, hopeful. If she walked, who would keep them breathing? Her throat burned. She tied the ribbon back on than ever. The mission began under clouded skies. The convoy rumbled toward the training grounds, except this time it wasn't plywood mock-ups and stage threats. It was a real compound, real guards, real weapons. The rookies checked their gear with shaky hands. She moved among them, calm on the surface, voice steady. "Check your sights. Don't overthink the plan, watch each other, and remember, no one gets left." They nodded, clinging to her words like lifelines. His voice crackled softly in her earpiece as they approached the target. "You're steadying them." "I'm lying to them," she whispered back. The breach came fast. Shouts, boots pounding against concrete. Chaos swallowed order. Felicity moved with practiced precision, rifle cutting through doorways, eyes scanning shadows. Every corner felt too familiar. Every shot brought the past roaring back. One rookie froze again, paralyzed in the doorway. Felicity grabbed his vest, yanking him forward, voice sharp in his ear. "Move or you're dead. Now." He stumbled, caught himself, pressed on. She hated herself for the harshness, but it kept him alive. Gunfire erupted from the second floor. Rounds slammed into walls, sparks and dust filling the air. One soldier went down with a cry, paint exploding across his vest, except it wasn't paint. Blood. Real. Her stomach dropped. She dropped to a knee beside him, checking the wound. Lower abdomen, bad but not instantly fatal. She shouted into comms, "Medic now." The kid's eyes were wide, terrified. Am I? Breathe, she snapped. You're not done, not today. Her hands pressed firm against the wound, her sleeve soaking red. His voice barked over comms, "Clear the floor, move." The firefight raged on above them, but all she could see was the boy's face. His trembling hand grabbed her wrist, feeling the ribbon beneath the sleeve. "What's that mean?" he gasped. Her throat caught. For once she had no answer. "Focus on me," she said instead. "Not the ribbon, me." The mission dragged on, brutal and chaotic. By the time the compound was secured, dawn had begun to break. The boy survived barely. The others stumbled out exhausted, their faces carved with shock. Felicity walked among them, blood still staining her sleeves, the ribbon darker now, hidden beneath it all. They had survived again, but at what cost? Back at base, Harrison called her in immediately. She entered his office still in blood-stained gear. His eyes flicked to her sleeves, then back to her face. "You kept him alive," he said flatly. Her voice was a blade. "You sent him there to die." "He volunteered." He didn't know what he was walking into. Harrison's jaw tightened. "Neither did you once." Her breath caught. "Don't compare me to them. You were younger than most of them when you started, and look what you became." Her fists clenched. "A ghost with no name, a ribbon with numbers that haunt me every night. That's what I became." "And yet you keep showing up," Harrison said. "Why? Because you know the truth. They need someone like you, someone who can survive the fire and still walk back in." She shook her head, voice breaking. "No one survives the fire, they just burn slower." For the first time, Harrison looked away. That evening found her sitting by the perimeter fence, eyes on the horizon. "You can't keep carrying it all," he said gently. Her hands tightened around the ribbon. "Then tell me how to let it go." He sat beside her, silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "You don't. You just stop letting it be the only thing that defines you." She looked at him, tears burning her eyes. "And if I can't?" His hand rested lightly on hers, steadying. "Then I'll remind you, every damn day if I have to." Her chest trembled. For the first time in years, she let her head drop against his shoulder. For a moment, the ghosts were quiet. But the peace didn't last. That night, a sealed envelope slid under her door. She opened it with shaking hands. Orders. Not for training, not for support. For deployment. Real, immediate, classified. Her name written in black at the top. Ghost Widow 7. How many times could they kill her name before she stopped existing altogether? How many times could she rise as a ghost before she no longer remembered the girl who once wore a uniform with pride? The envelope sat heavy in her hands. The name wasn't Felicity. It wasn't Specialist. It wasn't even Sarah. It was Ghost Widow 7. The army had buried her once, erased her in paperwork, declared her gone. And yet here it was again, dragging her out of the grave. She sat on the bunk, the ribbon burning against her wrist. The silk had darkened with sweat, with blood, with years of silence. She wanted to tear it off, but she couldn't. It wasn't fabric anymore. It was shackles. It was skin. The comm device blinked. Colonel Wells's voice scrolled across the screen. Orders confirmed. Extraction unit wheels up at 200. Mission profile attached. You are primary asset. Asset, not soldier, not woman, not survivor. Asset. Her stomach churned. She set the device aside, fingers trembling. Knocked quietly before entering. He looked at the envelope, at her face, at the way her hands clenched around nothing. "They're sending you," he said softly. She nodded once. "They don't bury their weapons, they recycle them." His jaw tightened. "Then don't go." Her laugh was sharp, broken. "You think it's a choice." He stepped closer. "It always is." She lifted her sleeve, showing him the ribbon. Not for me. This is who I am now. This is all I'll ever be. His eyes softened, pained. That's not true. You're more than a number stitched into silk. You're the reason half those kids are still breathing. You're the reason I'm still standing. Her throat ached. If I walk away, they'll find me. If I go, I don't come back. Either way, I'm gone. He caught her hand, firm, steady. Then choose the way that means something to you, not to them. She wanted to believe him, wanted to cling to the warmth of his grip, the steadiness in his eyes, but the ghosts were louder. The ghosts always won. The mission brief was simple in words, impossible in weight. Target, arms depot in disputed territory. Objective, eliminate leadership, secure intelligence. Method, insertion at night, silent, no trace. Operative, Ghost Widow 7. They didn't even bother to write her name. At 200, the rotor wash pounded against her skin as she boarded the helicopter. Was there too, unofficial, unlisted, but unwilling to let her go alone. Harrison stood on the tarmac, eyes hard, unreadable. Bring it back alive, he said. She didn't know if he meant the mission or herself. The helicopter lifted into darkness. She sat in silence, hands gripping her rifle, leaned close, his voice steady in the roar of blades. We get in, we get out, together. She didn't answer. The insertion was clean, too clean. They landed in scrubland, shadows swallowing their forms. The depot rose in the distance, lights dim, guards packing. Felicity moved ahead, every step automatic. Her body remembered even when her soul recoiled. Scope to eye, breath slowed, crosshair steady. One guard down, silence, another silence. The ribbon seemed to tighten on her wrist with every pull of the trigger. Numbers climbing like chains around her throat. Voice in her ear, breathe steady, don't let it take you. But she already felt it taking her. They breached the depot. Gunfire cracked, shouts erupted. She moved through it like a shadow, clearing corners, her rifle an extension of her heartbeat. Covered her flank, his presence constant. Room by room, silence followed them. Until they found the command office. Inside, not just men with weapons, not just insurgents. A boy, 14, maybe 15, clutching a rifle too big for his hands, eyes wide with terror. Her crosshair found him instinctively, her finger curled. But her chest seized. The boy froze, staring at her, then back at her. Don't, whispered. Her breath shook. For years the ribbon had told her who she was, 298 confirmed, a widow who didn't miss. One pull and it would be 301, another stitch in silk, another ghost. Her finger trembled. The boy's hands shook on the rifle. He was scared, just a child dragged into a war he never asked for. She lowered her weapon. Go, she said softly. The boy blinked, then fled into the shadows. Her hands shook violently now. Her chest ached. The ribbon burned like fire against her skin. His voice was low, steady. That's it, that's you, not them, you. Tears blurred her vision. For the first time in years, she had said no. They exfiltrated with the intel, the depot burning behind them. The helicopter lifted into dawn, smoke trailing into the sky. Felicity sat in silence, rifle across her knees, ribbon still tied but looser now. Sat beside her, watching but not speaking. He didn't need to. Because she was speaking to herself now. For years she had let the ribbon define her. The numbers had written her story. But in that moment with the boy, she had chosen not to add another stitch, not to let the ghosts decide for her. She wasn't free, not yet, maybe not ever, but she was still alive, and being alive meant she could still choose. Back at base, Harrison met them on the tarmac. His eyes flicked to her sleeve, to the ribbon half hidden. No new numbers, he asked quietly. Her voice was steel, not this time. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. She walked past him, each step heavy but her chest lighter than it had been in years. That night, alone in her quarters, she untied the ribbon. For the first time since she could remember, she left it on the desk instead of her wrist. It didn't vanish. The ghosts didn't disappear, but the silk no longer choked her. She lay back on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, tears sliding silently down her temples. Maybe tomorrow she would pick it up again. Maybe she wouldn't. But for tonight she was more than a number, more than a ghost. For tonight she was Sarah. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.